Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Today's tale is brought to you by 50 Cents and one woman's spectacular failure to cheat the system. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with a turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. The lady who tried to shortchange me and failed spectacularly. Working as a cashier in college was an education in itself, not just in handling money, but in handling people. Most customers were fine, some were downright pleasant, and then there were the ones who treated you like an inconvenient vending machine. This particular shift had been uneventful until she walked in. A woman in her mid-40s, perfectly styled hair, designer handbag slung over her shoulder, strolled up to my register with a friend in tow. They were deep in conversation, laughing loudly, barely acknowledging me as they dumped their items onto the counter. No hello, no eye contact, just an impatient sigh when I dared to interrupt their riveting discussion to scan their things. I kept my customer service smile glued on, bagged their items, and announced the total. "That'll be $24.50, ma'am." She barely glanced at me as she pulled a wad of cash from her wallet, counted out $24, and slapped it on the counter like she'd just solved world hunger. "Ma'am, it's 50 cents more," I said, keeping my tone polite but firm. She rolled her eyes like I was the unreasonable one and turned back to her friend. "I want to pay cash," she said, as if that clarified anything. "Yes, ma'am. Do you have 50 more cents?" She swiveled her head toward me with the exaggerated slowness of someone who thought I was too stupid to understand basic math. "I want to pay with that cash." She jabbed a manicured finger at the bill she'd already handed over. So we're playing that game. "Yes, ma'am," I said brightly. Then I hit the cash button on the register, punched in 24, and let the drawer pop open. I made a show of placing her money inside before looking back at her with my best retail smile. "Okay, your remaining total is 50 cents. How would you like to pay for that?" Silence. For a glorious second, her face went blank. Then the realization hit her like a freight train. She'd just committed to only paying part of her bill, and now she had to cough up the rest. Her cheeks flushed pink. "I have 50 cents, she muttered, digging into her purse with suddenly very busy hands. Her friend, to her credit, lost it. She burst out laughing, doubling over while Miss I Pay with Cash fumbled for 2 quarters like they were buried at the bottom of the ocean. The sweet, sweet aftermath. She slapped the coins onto the counter without another word, snatched her bags, and power walked out of the store, her friend still cackling behind her. I handed the friend her receipt with a serene smile. "Y'all have a great day now." The look of sheer humiliation on that woman's face was worth every second of retail hell I endured. Some customers think cashiers are beneath basic respect, but sometimes, just sometimes, the universe lets us hand them a little slice of humble pie. And honestly, best 50 cents I ever didn't shortchange. Has the whole world gotten more self-absorbed and selfish when I wasn't looking? Or has it always been this way and I didn't notice? Honestly, this main character syndrome's a thing. And our second story. They insisted on talking to the account holder, so I called them from the cemetery. Some months after my mom sold up and downsized, I got a letter from a debt collection agency saying I owed them 134 pounds and some pence, including interest and fees. I had no idea what this was for, so I phoned them. It was for the broadband service at my mom's old house, now sold, which had been canceled a short time before she moved, along with the attached phone line. I explained that there must have been a mistake as the phone line and broadband were all in one package and I'd canceled it all together at the same time since the house was sold. The query went back to the supplier. They called me and said they'd been unable to cancel the broadband part of the service because the cancellation had not come in from the account holder, but I was the account holder. They said no, the account holder is Mr. My father's name. I explained that there really must have been a mix-up as he had died a few years earlier and I took over control of the telephone line and broadband account, paying that single bill for my mother along with some other regular bills since she no longer had my father's income to cover things. They insisted that they had to speak with the account holder and could no longer speak with me on the matter and refused to speak with me again, despite all the collection letters and threats of legal action being taken against me, not my deceased dad. They wouldn't take no for an answer, so I drove to his grave, phoned them up, and said, "Account holder's here. You can speak to him if you want." I left the mobile by the gravestone while I wandered around the quiet and pretty churchyard. I heard some irate voices at the end of the line, so I picked up the phone and asked if they had any joy speaking with the account holder. An angry voice asked what was going on, so I explained where I was and that I'd love to know if my dad had said anything to them since I'd been unable to reach him under 6 feet of churchyard dirt since we buried him a couple of years earlier. Silence at the end of the phone. I was passed to a manager who apologized profusely and said they'd sort it all out at their end. A month or so later, the debt collection agency sent me a letter saying the matter had been resolved with no balance owing. I would have sent a letter that outlined that I'd reached out to my dad via Ouija board and he's handed over account ownership to me. And our last story. HOA Karen, you're going to jail. I'm sitting on a heap of splintered lumber where my granddad's house used to stand. I didn't live here permanently, unfortunately, but came to look after the house sometimes once a week, sipping my neighbor's lukewarm beer and trying to wrap my head around what just happened. Yesterday at 5 a.m., I got off the night shift, planned to kick my feet up on the porch and crash. Instead, I found a Caterpillar bulldozer in the yard and 2 laborers leaning on their shovels, munching sandwiches. My cozy little place looked like Elvis himself had run it over in a Cadillac. One of the workers in a battered hard hat gave me an awkward nod. "Sorry, sir, this was listed as an abandoned structure. Orders were to take it down to the slab." Yeah, I didn't visit often, and maybe the place looked a little rough, but abandoned it was not. 5 minutes later, the HOA parade rolled up, Karen at the front. She wore bell-bottom slacks the color of condensed milk, butterfly glasses straight out of a Sears catalog, and an ironic smile like she'd won Miss Soy Latte. Shuffling papers, she announced, "This is an unfortunate misunderstanding. The documents got misplaced. We thought the house was vacant." I inhaled some of the dust swirling around and asked calmly, "Got a demolition permit?" "Well, it was around here somewhere. In the urgent folder, I'm sure. Must have slipped by a clerk. But we're eager to cooperate." She slid a peaceful settlement form toward me, phone number scrawled in lipstick. "Just sign and the HOA will cut you a check for a whole $5,000 to keep this quiet." $5,000? For the furniture, papers, family photos, and the place I grew up? All my memories? I smiled. Karen brightened, thinking I'd agreed. Actually, I was just adding zeros to her offer in my head. My fisherman neighbor, the Pabst Blue Ribbon aficionado, showed up with 2 folding chairs, a cooler of ice, and a can of paint. Months back, he'd fought a decorative war with Karen, plopped a 7-foot wooden flamingo on his porch, painted it neon, and dubbed it the HOA inspector. City Hall ruled the bird was art, so Karen couldn't touch it. Same story with Granddad's house. Not part of the HOA. Since then, my neighbors made a sport of annoying Karen. He shrugged. "Green Hill's messed up again, huh? Here, have a beer." It's like fishing. Patience is everything. Karen and her board huddled nearby, whispering about how to smooth over the incident. I stayed silent, studying their panicked faces. Wouldn't be long now. Next morning, I visited the county clerk, pulled the old records, then booked a few hours with the local prosecutor. Karen had no clue my weird schedule wasn't waiter shifts like she guessed, but, well, more on that later. Inside of 3 days, the auditors uncovered bogus fines for weeds over 2 inches and excessively loud sunset, hundreds of dollars deposited not in the HOA account, but in a shell company called KAA Services. Karen's initials. Pure coincidence, right? Phantom contracts for pool repairs and new streetlights, $45,000 that never became concrete or bulbs. A vacant house demolition agreement bearing the signature of the same bulldozer operator who'd been eating lunch on my lawn. Best part, the so-called demolition order Karen waved at me was a fake, typed on a manual typewriter with no official seal. The court clerk told me that, and I winked. There was a badge in my pocket, but it hadn't seen daylight yet. Meanwhile, my neighbor set up an impromptu bar in what was left of my basement, stretching a tarp, hung lights, and posted a sign, BYOC, bring your own cup. The auditors, rifling through HOA files, dropped by for breaks, munching donuts and laughing. Man, your Karen ought to be in Hollywood. Imagination like that sells. Karen watched the party, started to sweat. She rushed over, waving a freshly printed check. Look, I can bump the payout to $15,000. Quietly. No police, okay? No police, I echoed. And who am I then? Karen blinked. I slowly pulled my badge from my jacket and let it catch the sun. Surprise, City PD, doing a little off-schedule anti-corruption training right in your front yard. Karen's face drained faster than milk in July. She swallowed her words, spun around, and sprinted for her Cadillac, leaving the check fluttering in the breeze. September 7th, 6 a.m. The sheriff and I knocked on Karen's door. She answered in a robe and curlers that looked like baby corn. The sheriff read calmly, Karen Elaine Anderson, you're under arrest for fraud, abuse of office, document forgery, and unlawful destruction of private property. You have the right to remain silent. Karen tried her trademark, yet handcuffs don't pair well with grand gestures. That same morning, the contractor from Tri-State Demolition was scooped up with his coffee. The bulldozer driver spilled everything. I thought it was legit. She paid cash. The courtroom was packed. Locals wanted front row seats for the fall of the bell-bottom queen. My fisherman neighbor showed up in his bucket hat, clutching a beer in a brown bag. The judge frowned. Lose the beverage, sir. Your Honor, it's bait. Hitting the lake right after. The gallery cracked up, and the judge let him stash it under the bench. The prosecutor laid out evidence like poker cards. Fake checks, forged orders, photos of my demolished porch. The jury deliberated 4 hours. Verdict, guilty on every count. 6 years, eligible for parole after 3. The HOA was placed under outside management, and every bogus fine got refunded to the homeowners. Insurance money in my civil suit bankrolled a brand new house, now with a storm shelter and an oversized garage. The Flamingo, it's now black and white, sporting a tin sheriff star, greeting everyone at the subdivision entrance. Just a reminder, my neighbor laughs, that red tape dies screaming when it meets the law. Yesterday at the post office, I overheard 2 new HOA board members arguing. Rule number 1, total transparency. And no bulldozers without paperwork. I just smiled and headed home to a fresh porch, a loyal dog, and the best neighbor on earth holding an ice-cold Pabst. Funny how one little mix-up turned into Karen's personal thriller and a brand new order for the whole neighborhood. Thanks, Karen, for the free lesson and for ensuring no bulldozer moves an inch around here without 3 stamps and a cop's signature. The beer neighbor is a very strange person, but it seems that he supported the author in the most difficult moment. The beer neighbor is a very strange person, but it seems that he supported the author in the most difficult moment. Or he just wanted to have a beer with someone. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.